Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. Before my life imploded, I was Oliver Ollie to my friends. I was a sophomore in college, coasting on a decent GPA, a passable charm, and a level of self-confidence that, in hindsight, bordered on delusional. My worldview was simple, life was a game, and I was pretty good at playing it. Feelings, especially the female variety, were just unnecessary complications. Drama, I called it, a messy, illogical thing I had no time for. My ex, Bella, would have said I was a jerk. She wouldn't be entirely wrong. "You just don't get it, Ollie," she'd told me during our last fight, her voice tight with a frustration I couldn't be bothered to decipher. "You don't listen. You hear words, but you don't feel anything." I just shrugged, running a hand through my short brown hair. "Feel what? That you're mad I was 20 minutes late, bro. Chill out. I'm here now, aren't I?" That was me, Mr. Fix-It, Mr. Logical, Mr. Why are you crying? It's not a big deal. The night it all changed started, as most disasters do, with cheap beer and bad decisions. It was a Tuesday, which meant nothing to a dorm full of students pretending it was Friday. Music pulsed through the thin walls of our shared room, the bass vibrating up through the soles of my sneakers. My roommate, Zach, was hunched over his desk, ignoring the chaos as usual. He was pre-med, which meant his idea of a wild night was organizing his organic chemistry notes by color. "Dude, you gotta come out," I said, clapping him on the shoulder. "There's a whole world out there. It's called a party." Zach didn't look up. He just pointed a pen at a tray on his desk. It was filled with small, neatly labeled plastic vials and containers. His internship at a local biotech lab meant our room was often a temporary storage unit for non-hazardous, or so I assumed, samples. "I've got a pharmacology midterm, Ollie, and don't touch that stuff. It's for a clinical trial overview." Right, super important science stuff," I said, my eyes landing on a small, unlabeled bottle containing a dozen or so tiny, shimmering pink pills. They looked like candy. "What are these super vitamins, brain boosters?" "Nutritional supplements for hormonal balancing," he muttered, still not looking at me. "Mostly placebos for this batch, but the active ones are for regulating estrogen cycles. Seriously, leave it alone." Estrogen cycles, whatever. The word went in one ear and out the other. The party was calling my name. An hour later, I was 3 beers deep and feeling invincible. Bella was there, shooting daggers at me from across the room to annoy her. I was flirting shamelessly with a girl from my sociology class. It was all a performance, a stupid show of bravado. Later, stumbling back into my room to grab another jacket, my head was buzzing, my throat felt dry. I saw a glass of water on my desk, and next to it, the little bottle of pink pills. Zach was gone, probably at the library. The nerd. Hormonal balancing, his voice echoed faintly in my memory. I snorted. What did that even mean? They were probably just fancy B vitamins. In my drunken haze, an idea, a stupid, monumentally idiotic idea formed. I'd pop one. What was the worst that could happen? It would be a funny story to tell the guys tomorrow. "Bro, it's just a pink vitamin," I mumbled to myself. Unscrewing the cap, I tipped one into my palm. It glittered under the desk lamp. What's the worst that could happen? I tossed it into my mouth, swallowed it down with the water, and promptly forgot all about it. I rejoined the party, drank 2 more beers, and eventually collapsed into my bed around 2 a.m., the world spinning around me in a lazy, drunken orbit. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. I woke up to moonlight, not the gentle, hazy kind, but a sharp, silver blade cutting through the gap in the curtains, pinning me to my mattress. My head wasn't pounding, which was the first weird thing. Usually, after that much cheap beer, my skull felt like a drum. The second weird thing was a feeling, a deep, full-body tingle, like my entire nervous system was waking up from a long sleep. It wasn't unpleasant, it was electric. I stretched, and a jolt, sharp and sudden, shot through my spine. I gasped, but the sound that came out wasn't mine. It was higher, softer. I sat bolt upright, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. I tried to clear my throat, to speak my own name. "Ollie?" I tried to say. The name came out as a breathy, melodic whisper. Wait, what the hell, I said, or tried to say. The voice that echoed in the silent room was that of a stranger, a girl, my voice. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. I scrambled out of bed, my limbs feeling strangely uncoordinated. My oversized t-shirt and boxer shorts felt huge, like I'd shrunk. The floor felt miles away. Another wave of sensation crashed over me. It started in my bones, a deep, unsettling ache that felt like growing pains, but compressed into a few terrifying seconds. My hips broadened with an audible pop that made me cry out, a sound that was now a genuine, high-pitched scream. My shoulders seemed to narrow, pulling inward. My whole frame was reconfiguring itself, melting and reshaping under my skin. I stumbled toward the full-length mirror leaning against the wall, my hands flying to my body. My skin, it was soft, impossibly soft. The familiar light dusting of hair on my arms and chest was gone. My waist had curved inward, and my hands, when I held them up, were smaller, more slender. Then came the burning. It was centered on my chest, a tight, intense pressure building under the thin cotton of my shirt. I looked down just as two small, sensitive mounds pushed outward, the fabric straining against them. I touched one, my fingers trembling. The feeling was so alien, so sensitive. It sent a shock through my entire body. "No, no, no," I whimpered, the feminine voice making the denial sound pathetic. My hair, my short, practical brown hair, was now a curtain falling past my shoulders. I could feel its weight, the silky strands brushing against my new, softer jawline. I reached up and tangled my fingers in it. It was real. Finally, I stood before the mirror. The moonlight illuminated the stranger staring back at me. She had wide, terrified eyes, my eyes, but somehow larger, more expressive. Her face was heart-shaped, with high cheekbones and full lips that were parted in a silent scream. Her body was slender, delicate, with gentle curves where I used to have hard angles. She was wearing my stupid band t-shirt, which now hung off her like a dress, and my boxers, which were ridiculously baggy around her slim hips. And I knew her. I'd seen her face before, in a coffee shop near campus, a few times. She was always alone, reading, a sad, thoughtful look in her eyes. I'd never spoken to her, but I remembered her. Her name was Ellie. The face in the mirror, Ellie's face, was now my own. The pink pill, the hormonal supplement. It wasn't a vitamin, it was something else, magic, a curse. The room started to spin. The reflection wavered. The girl in the mirror looking as terrified as I felt. My knees buckled, and I crumpled to the floor. My last coherent thought before the darkness swallowed me being a single, desperate question: what has happened to me? Sunlight, that's what woke me the second time. It was warm and unforgiving, streaming through the window and illuminating every speck of dust in the air. For a blissful, fleeting second, I thought it had all been a nightmare, a bizarre, beer-fueled hallucination. Then I moved. The first thing I noticed was the weight on my chest. It wasn't heavy, but it was present, a soft, undeniable pressure. The second was the cascade of hair that fell over my face as I sat up. It tickled my nose. It wasn't a dream. I stayed frozen, sitting on the floor where I'd collapsed, listening. Zach's side of the room was empty, his bed neatly made. He must have left for an early class. Thank God. I couldn't imagine trying to explain this. I couldn't even explain it to myself. Slowly, painfully, I got to my feet. My body felt like a foreign country I was visiting for the first time. My center of gravity was different. My limbs felt lighter, my balance precarious. Every step was a conscious effort. I made it back to the mirror and braced myself. The girl from last night was still there. Ellie, in the daylight. The transformation was even more stark. My skin was pale and smooth, completely hairless except for the dark, arched eyebrows and the thick, long lashes framing hazel eyes. My jaw, once square and stubborn, was now delicate. My Adam's apple was gone. I lifted the hem of the t-shirt. A flat, toned stomach tapered down to hips that were definitely not mine. Below them, between my legs, everything was different, wrong, gone, replaced. A wave of nausea and vertigo washed over me. I gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling again. This was real. This was permanent. Or was it the pill? Maybe it would wear off. It had to wear off. Okay, Ollie, think, just think. But my brain was a scrambled mess of panic and disbelief. The voice in my head was still mine, my thoughts, my sarcasm, my terror. But every time I made a sound, a soft feminine gasp escaped my lips. The disconnect was dizzying. First things first, clothes. I couldn't stay in these baggy things forever. Zach could come back at any moment. I looked at my closet, my jeans, my hoodies, my shirts. They would all swallow this new body whole. They were Ollie's clothes, and I wasn't Ollie anymore. Not on the outside. My gaze fell on the other closet, the one that had been empty since the start of the semester. Zach's old roommate had transferred, and we hadn't been assigned a new one. But this was Ellie's face. If I was somehow in her body, did that mean I was in her life? Did I live here now? My head was spinning with impossible questions when I heard a key in the lock. Panic flared, hot and immediate. I dove for my bed, pulling the covers up to my chin just as the door swung open. It wasn't Zach. It was a girl with a shock of bright red hair and a no-nonsense look on her face. She was holding a coffee cup and a paper bag. "Ellie," she said, her voice sharp with concern. "You weren't answering your phone. I thought you might have died in here." She stopped dead when she saw me peeking out from the blankets, her eyes widening. "Whoa, girl, you look like you just saw a ghost. Are you okay?" My mind raced. Ellie, she called me Ellie. This girl clearly knew her. I had to play along. I had to say something. I cleared my throat, which did nothing to change the pitch of my voice. Yeah, I stammered. Just a rough night." The redhead, who I would soon learn was Anna, Ellie's best friend, narrowed her eyes. She walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. Placing the bag and coffee on the nightstand, the bag smelled like bacon. My stomach growled, a surprisingly dainty sound. "Rough night, you look different," she said, tilting her head. "Did you do something with your hair? It looks longer. And your voice sounds weird. Are you getting sick?" "Think, Ollie. Think, nay." "New shampoo, I guess," I squeaked, the excuse so pathetic it was almost painful. "And yeah, maybe a cold coming on." Anna didn't look convinced, but she let it slide. "Well, I brought breakfast burritos. Figured you'd need one after ghosting me all yesterday. We were supposed to go shopping, remember?" Shopping. The word sent a fresh wave of terror through me. I couldn't go shopping. I couldn't go anywhere. I was a man trapped in a woman's body, a body that apparently belonged to a real person named Ellie, who had a life and a very perceptive best friend. I don't feel so good," I said, sinking back into the pillows. "I think I'll just stay in today." "No way," Anna said, already moving toward the empty closet. "You've been moping around for weeks. You promised. We're going to the mall. We're trying on ridiculously expensive dresses we can't afford. And you're going to get out of this funk now. What are you going to wear? Something cute for once?" She threw open the closet doors. It wasn't empty. It was full of clothes. Her clothes. Ellie's clothes. My life was officially over. Anna was a force of nature, a whirlwind of cheerful tyranny. My protests were useless. 20 minutes later, I was standing in the middle of the room, wrapped in a towel after a shower that could only be described as a deeply traumatic voyage of discovery, while Anna rummaged through Ellie's closet. "Okay, how about this?" she said, holding up a pair of tight-looking jeans and a delicate, lacy top. My brain short-circuited. Jeans. Okay, I can do jeans, but that top, it's see-through. "Isn't it a little cold for that?" I managed, my voice trembling slightly. Anna rolled her eyes. "It's called a camisole. Ellie, you wear it underneath. God, it's like you woke up with amnesia." She tossed the clothes onto the bed. Then her eyes fell on the towel. "Are you just going to stand there? Get dressed. We're burning daylight." She turned her back to give me a semblance of privacy, but her presence filled the room, a constant, pressurizing force. My hands shook as I dropped the towel. The cool air on my new skin was a shock. I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way I had never imagined. First, the underwear. In a drawer, I found a pile of soft, colorful lace and cotton. I picked out the plainest pair I could find, my cheeks burning with a heat that had nothing to do with the room temperature. Putting them on felt like a sacrilege, a violation. This was someone else's life, someone else's intimacy. Next came the bra. It was a contraption of straps, hooks, and bafflingly complex engineering. I fumbled with it for what felt like an eternity, trying to figure out how the clasps worked. In the mirror, I saw my reflection struggling, my slender fingers clumsy and inept. I looked pathetic. "Need some help there?" Anna called over her shoulder, a teasing note in her voice. "No, I got it," I yelped, finally managing to hook it, albeit crookedly. The feeling was bizarre, a constant, restrictive pressure around my chest. Then the clothes. The camisole was soft, but the lace top over it felt flimsy, decorative. The jeans were the hardest part. They were skinny jeans, designed to hug every curve. My old self lived in baggy cargo pants and loose-fitting denim. Pulling these on was a struggle, a battle of fabric against flesh. When I finally zipped them up, they felt like a second skin. I could feel the denim against my thighs, my calves, my newly rounded hips. It was suffocating. "Ready?" Anna asked. Turning around, she looked me up and down, a critical frown on her face. Then she broke into a grin. "See, you look human again now. Shoes." She pointed to a rack of footwear that was a minefield of potential injuries. Sandals, sneakers, and my worst fear, heels. Thankfully, she picked a pair of simple white sneakers. As I sat on the bed to put them on, a strange thought flickered through my mind. Staring at my reflection, I had to admit, the clothes fit. They looked good. The jeans accentuated the curve of my hips, and the top was delicate and feminine. For a split second, looking at the girl in the mirror, I didn't feel disgust. I felt a tiny, terrifying flutter of something else. Curiosity, approval. I shoved the feeling down, hard. This isn't you, Ollie. This is a costume, a prison. The outside world was a sensory overload. The sun felt different on my skin. The breeze was a physical presence, weaving through my long hair, making the strands dance around my face. The way people looked at me was different. Two men, in particular, their eyes would linger for a second too long. A casual appraisal that made my skin crawl. I'd done that 1,000,000 times myself, never once thinking about what it felt like to be on the receiving end. Now I knew. It felt like being a specimen under a microscope. Anna chattered away, oblivious to my internal meltdown. She dragged me from store to store, holding up dresses, critiquing colors, and forcing me into changing rooms. Each time I had to peel off the jeans and top, I felt a fresh wave of shame and dissociation. This wasn't my body. This wasn't my life. In one store, Anna held up a soft, flowy sundress in a pale yellow. "Oh, this would look amazing on you," she insisted. "Try it on, for me." Defeated, I took it into the little cubicle. The fabric was light as air. As I slipped it over my head, it settled over my shoulders and torso, the skirt whispering around my knees. I turned to the mirror. The girl staring back looked pretty. The yellow brought out the warm tones in my skin. The cut of the dress was simple but elegant, and for the first time, I saw not just a stranger, but a glimmer of the person this body belonged to. Ellie, a girl who would wear a dress like this. A voice, soft and melancholic, whispered in the back of my mind. It wasn't my own thought. It felt like an echo. "Now you'll understand how it feels." I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. It was her. I could feel her. A presence. A memory lingering in the shell I now inhabited. This wasn't just a physical transformation. It was something deeper. Something far more terrifying. This wasn't an accident. It was a lesson. And it was just beginning. The next few days were a crash course in being a woman. And I was failing spectacularly. My life became a series of small, humiliating challenges. Walking was a constant negotiation between my brain, which still expected a male gait, and my body, which had a completely different rhythm. I kept bumping into things. My new, wider hips seemed to have a mind of their own. My hair was a sentient entity that was actively trying to ruin my life. It got in my food, it got caught indoors, and it tickled my face when I was trying to sleep. I spent 20 minutes one morning watching a YouTube tutorial on how to put it in a simple ponytail, a task that left me with aching arms and a lopsided mess of strands. Then there was makeup. Anna, Convinced my sickness was just a bad mood. Decided a makeover was the cure. She sat me down in front of Ellie's vanity, a place I hadn't dared to touch, and laid out an intimidating arsenal of brushes, pencils, and powders. "Okay, first we even out your skin tone," she declared, dabbing a cold, wet sponge on my face. I flinched. "What is that?" "Foundation? You weirdo, have you hit your head?" For an hour, I was her doll. She poked and prodded, brushed and blended. She curled my eyelashes with a terrifying metal clamp, a process I was sure would end in blindness. She painted my eyelids with shimmery dust and drew a sharp, black line along the top. The final touch was lipstick, a glossy pink that felt sticky and unnatural. When she was done, she held up a mirror. Ta-da! I stared at the face in the reflection. It was Ellie, but an amplified version. Her eyes looked huge, her lips fuller, her skin flawless. The transformation was shocking. The girl in the mirror was undeniably beautiful, and as much as I hated to admit it, a part of my brain, the old, stupid, male part, registered that beauty with a jolt of appreciation. The new, confused part of my brain just felt a profound sense of alienation. Who is that? The inner conflict was tearing me apart. In my head, I was still Ollie. I thought like Ollie. I swore like Ollie. My internal monologue was a constant stream of sarcastic, frustrated commentary. Great, now I have to figure out how to pee sitting down without making a mess. Fantastic, but the person living my life, the one interacting with the world, was this strange girl, this Ellie. And sometimes, the line between us would blur. I'd be listening to music from Ellie's playlist, and a song would come on that filled me with a sudden, overwhelming sadness I couldn't explain. Or I'd walk past the campus coffee shop and feel a pang of loneliness so sharp it took my breath away. These weren't my feelings. They were echoes, remnants of her life bleeding into mine. The scariest moments were the quiet ones. At night, after Anna had gone back to her own dorm, I'd lie in bed and just feel. I'd feel the softness of the sheets against my skin, the gentle rise and fall of my chest, the strange new contours of my body under my hands. And in those moments, a terrifying curiosity would bloom. What does this feel like? What is it like to be her? I started to explore, tentatively, shamefully. I'd try on her clothes when no one was around. Not just the jeans and t-shirts, but the other things. The skirts that swished around my legs. The dresses that made me feel delicate and graceful. I found a pair of low, block heels and practiced walking in them, wobbling around the room like a newborn foal. Why am I doing this, I'd ask myself. My heart pounding with a mixture of fear and a strange, illicit excitement. This is sick. This is wrong. But I couldn't stop. It was like I had to understand the mechanics of this new existence, to learn the rules of the prison I was in. Or maybe, just maybe, a small part of me was starting to wonder if it was a prison at all. Zach knew. He didn't know what he knew, but he knew something was wrong. I'd managed to avoid him for 3 days, a feat of strategic cowardice that involved memorizing his class schedule and sprinting down hallways if I thought I saw him, but my luck ran out on Friday. I was walking back to the dorm, lost in thought, when he came around a corner and we nearly collided. "Whoa, sorry," he said. Stepping back, he looked at me, and his eyes, usually calm and analytical, widened in confusion. "Ellie?" My blood ran cold. He knew Ellie. Of course, he knew Ellie. They must have been friends. Or more. Hi," I said, my voice coming out as a breathless squeak. I tried to walk past him, but he put a hand gently on my arm to stop me. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "I haven't seen you around. Anna said you were sick." "I'm fine," I said quickly, pulling my arm away. "Just busy." He kept looking at me, his gaze intense and searching. It made me feel like I was completely transparent. "You're different today," he said slowly. Here it is, he knows I'm a fake. "It's the makeup," I blurted out, gesturing vaguely at my face. Anna had insisted on a natural look that morning, which apparently required 15 different products. Zach gave a small, unconvinced smile. "No, it's not that." He tilted his head. You don't walk like her. My stomach dropped. How I walked. Who pays attention to how someone walks? My old Ollie instincts kicked in to deflect with sarcasm. And you don't look like a detective. But here we are, I retorted. The words were mine, but the voice was hers, and the combination sounded bizarrely catty. Zach's eyebrows shot up in surprise. He looked taken aback. Then a thoughtful expression crossed his face. You're right, he said softly. Sorry, I didn't mean to be weird. It's just good to see you up and about. He walked away, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He was watching me. He was analyzing me. And he was the only one who knew the real me. Ollie was missing. He was the only one who could expose me. That night, Anna announced we were going to a party, a real one, at a frat house off campus. No, I said immediately. Absolutely not. I'm not feeling up to it. Nonsense, she declared, already pulling a slinky black dress from the closet. You've been cooped up all week. You need to socialize. Besides, I heard Mark Jennings is going to be there. You know you think he's cute. I had no idea who Mark Jennings was, and the thought of navigating a crowded, sweaty frat party in this body was my new personal vision of hell. But arguing with Anna was like arguing with a hurricane. An hour later, I was stuffed into the black dress. It was short, dangerously short. It was also tight, clinging to every single one of my new curves. Anna had done my hair in soft waves and insisted on a pair of black heels that added 2 inches to my height and 1,000% to my anxiety. Looking in the mirror, I felt a dizzying mix of emotions. I was terrified. I was embarrassed. And, God help me, a tiny treacherous part of me thought I looked hot. The dress was undeniably flattering. It made my legs look long, my waist all small. The thought was so jarring that I felt a blush creep up my neck. You're blushing, girl, Anna squealed, clapping her hands. You totally know you look amazing. Now let's go. The party was a nightmare. The music was so loud I could feel it in my bones. The air was thick with the smell of beer and sweat. And everywhere I looked, there were eyes. Guys looked at me with a predatory interest that made me want to shrink and disappear. Girls looked at me with a mixture of competition and curiosity. I felt like an imposter, a spy in enemy territory. I stayed glued to Anna's side, sipping on a cup of jungle juice that I didn't drink, my posture rigid with tension. Relax, Anna shouted over the music, and go talk to someone. But I couldn't. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to smile coquettishly, how to laugh at dumb jokes, how to navigate the complex social dance of being a young woman at a party. Ollie would have been in his element here, joking, flirting, being the center of attention. But Ollie was gone. And Ellie, I had no idea who she was supposed to be in this situation. I eventually escaped to the back porch, desperate for a moment of quiet. I leaned against the railing, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. Hiding. I jumped. It was Zach. He was leaning against the wall a few feet away, holding a single red cup. Just needed some air, I mumbled, not looking at him. We stood in silence for a moment. It wasn't awkward, just so heavy. You really don't seem like yourself tonight, Ellie, he said, his voice low and calm. I told you, I've been sick. It's more than that, he insisted gently. You seem lost. I finally turned to look at him. In the dim light of the porch, his face was serious, his eyes full of a genuine concern that pricked at my conscience. He wasn't trying to expose me. He was worried about the girl he thought I was. The guilt was a physical weight in my chest. I'm fine. Zach, really, I said, my voice softer than I intended. Before he could reply, a loud, obnoxious voice cut through the air. Well, well, look what we have here. I froze. I knew that voice. It was Bella. She sauntered onto the porch, a smirk playing on her lips. Her eyes raked over me, from my heels to my hair, a flicker of something disdain surprise in her expression. So, she said, her voice dripping with venom, I guess Ollie finally traded up, though I have to say I'm not sure this is an improvement. She looked me up and down again. You're the girl from the coffee shop, right? The quiet one. My past and present were colliding, and I was trapped in the middle, I couldn't speak, my throat was too tight. Bella just laughed, a short, ugly sound. Cat got your tongue, or are you just as boring as you look? And then something inside me snapped. It wasn't Ollie's anger, it was something else. A protective, indignant rage that felt like it belonged to Ellie. You should leave, I said, my voice dangerously quiet but clear as a bell. Bella's smirk faltered. Excuse me? I said you should leave, I repeated. Stepping forward, I felt strangely powerful in the stupid dress and painful heels. You've said your piece, now go. Bella stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. For a second, I thought she was going to fight back, but then she just scoffed, shot a dirty look at Zach, and stormed back into the party. I stood there, trembling, the adrenaline slowly draining away. You okay, Zach asked, his voice full of surprise. Yeah, I breathed. I'm fine. But I wasn't, because in that moment, defending myself, defending Ellie, I hadn't felt like Ollie playing a role. For the first time, I had felt like myself, and I had no idea who that was anymore. The following week, a heat wave descended on campus, suffocating the city in a blanket of humid air. Anna, ever the opportunist, declared it was the perfect excuse for a trip to the university pool. We are going, she announced, bursting into the room without knocking. And you are not going to wear that sad one-piece you've had since high school. We're getting you a new swimsuit. My protests were, as usual, completely ignored. An hour later, I found myself standing under the harsh fluorescent lights of a department store's swimwear section. It was a jungle of neon colors, complicated straps, and impossibly small triangles of fabric. It was my personal hell. Anna was a ruthless shopper. She grabbed a dozen different bikinis off the racks, shoving them into my arms. The changing rooms are this way, she said, herding me toward a row of curtain stalls. Try everything on. No excuses. Inside the small cubicle, I stared at the pile of swimwear with a sense of dread. This was so much worse than the dress. This was exposure. Total, unapologetic exposure. My hands trembled as I took off my clothes. I stood in front of the three-way mirror in just my underwear, my heart hammering against my ribs. I avoided looking at my reflection, focusing instead on the first bikini. It was a simple black triangle top with matching bottoms. Getting it on was a clumsy, awkward process. The top felt flimsy, offering almost no coverage. The bottoms were cut higher on the hips than I was comfortable with. Tying the strings behind my back and neck was a logistical nightmare. When I was finally done, I forced myself to look up. The reflection was jarring. It was a girl's body, my body, now on display in a way I'd never seen it before. The smooth skin of my stomach, the curve of my waist, the soft shape of my breast held in place by two small pieces of fabric. I saw every detail, every line, every new part of myself I was still trying to ignore, my entire body flushed with a hot, prickly shame. This felt so profoundly wrong. This isn't me. The thought was a desperate mantra. I'm a guy. I shouldn't be here. Wearing this? How's it going in there? Anna's voice called from the other side of the curtain. Fine, I squeaked. Let me see. Before I could object, she pulled the curtain back a few inches and peeked in. Her eyes lit up. Oh my God, Ellie, that's perfect. It looks amazing on you. I instinctively crossed my arms over my chest, a useless gesture. I don't know, Anna. It's a little revealing. It's a bikini, not a nun's habit. She laughed. You look fantastic. Stop being so self-conscious. She disappeared for a second, and then her hand reappeared, holding another one. Okay, try this floral one next. For the next half hour, I was a living doll, trying on one bikini after another while Anna offered her unfiltered commentary. A blue one was too boring. A red one was a little too much. A striped one made her dizzy. With each change, a strange thing happened. The initial, overwhelming wave of shame began to recede, replaced by a numb sort of acceptance. And under that numbness, something else was stirring, a clinical curiosity. I started to notice things not as a man looking at a woman's body, but as an occupant studying their new vessel. My shoulders were slender but strong, my legs were long and toned, my stomach was flat. Objectively, it was a nice body, a beautiful one. Even the last bikini was a soft lavender color. The top was a bandeau style, and the bottoms had little ties on the sides. As I put it on, I felt different. The color complemented my skin tone, and the cut was flattering without being overtly sexual. I turned slowly in front of the mirror, looking at my reflection from all angles. And then it happened. For a single terrifying moment, the internal monologue stopped. The panic, the shame, the frantic inner commentary of Ollie went silent. And in that silence, I just saw me, a girl in a lavender bikini, and the thought that surfaced wasn't one of horror or disgust. It was I actually look pretty. The thought was so foreign, so utterly unexpected that it felt like a physical blow, a blush, deep and hot, spread from my chest all the way to the tips of my ears. It was a genuine, involuntary reaction. Anna, of course, chose that exact moment to peek in again. Ooh, I love the purple and you're blushing. Girl, see, I told you you'd find one you liked. Her teasing words broke the spell. The shame came rushing back, 10 times stronger than before because of my momentary lapse. I had liked it for a second. I had enjoyed seeing myself as a girl. What did that mean? What was happening to me was Ollie being erased. I'm dying inside. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was stand there blushing furiously while Anna beamed at me. We're getting that one, she declared. I didn't argue. I didn't have the strength. As I changed back into my clothes, my hands felt disconnected from my body. I had crossed a line, a dangerous, invisible line, and I had the terrifying feeling that there was no going back. The dreams started that night. They weren't my dreams. They were fragmented, like broken pieces of film. I was in the campus library, but my hands were tracing the spine of a poetry book I'd never read. I was sitting in the back of a lecture hall, doodling in the margins of a notebook, my handwriting a graceful, looping script that wasn't mine. I was laughing with Anna, a real genuine laugh that bubbled up from my chest, the sound both familiar and alien. These were her memories, Ellie's. They came without warning, hijacking my sleep. I felt her joy, her boredom, her anxieties. I felt the crushing pressure she felt to get good grades, the quiet ache of missing her family who lived miles away, the flutter in her stomach whenever she saw Zach studying across the room. That was the worst part, the dreams about Zach. I saw him through her eyes. I saw him not as my goofy, nerdy roommate, but as someone kind, steady, and handsome. I felt her admiration for his focus, her secret smile when he'd make a dry, witty comment, her deep, unspoken crush on him. In one dream, they were studying together, their hands brushing as they reached for the same textbook. I felt the electric jolt that shot up her arm, the blush that heated her cheeks. I woke up from that one in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. The feeling that giddy, nervous flutter was still lingering in my chest. It was her emotion, but my body was reacting to it. I looked over at Zach's empty bed and felt a confusing, toxic mix of feelings. There was the lingering ghost of Ellie's affection, but there was also a surge of something else, a hot, possessive feeling. It was jealousy, my jealousy, Ollie's jealousy. But who was I jealous of? Was I jealous of Zach for being the object of her affection? Or was I jealous of her for having felt that for him? The lines were blurring so fast I couldn't keep up. During the day, I'd find myself using her gestures, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, biting my lower lip when I was thinking. I even started to understand the baffling logic of her wardrobe, instinctively reaching for clothes that I knew would go together. One afternoon, I was alone in the room trying to study, but the words on the page swam before my eyes. I felt a profound sadness settle over me, a heavy cloak of melancholy I couldn't shake. I didn't know where it came from. I just knew I felt lonely. I walked to the mirror and stared at my reflection. At Ellie's reflection, her face looked sad, her hazel eyes clouded with an old sorrow. "What do you want from me?" I whispered to the girl in the glass. The air in the room grew still. For a moment, her reflection seemed to flicker, to become more solid, more independent, and then I heard her voice again, not as a thought but as a clear whisper in my mind. "Would you still mock me if you lived as me?" The question hung in the air, An indictment of the person I used to be, the jerk who called women drama, the guy who dismissed Bella's feelings as an overreaction. I thought of all the times I had been careless, thoughtless, cruel. I had never once considered the impact of my words, the weight of the feelings behind them. Now I was living them. I was feeling the insecurity of being judged on my appearance, the vulnerability of being a woman in a world of men, the emotional highs and lows that I had once so casually dismissed. I was living her life, feeling her memories, and slowly, painfully, I was starting to understand. When Zach came back to the room later, I looked at him, and the confusion was overwhelming. I saw my roommate, but I also saw the boy Ellie had a crush on, and when he smiled at me, a small, kind smile, my stomach did a little flip. And this time, I wasn't sure if the feeling was hers, or if it was mine. Zach cornered me a few days later. I was coming out of the library, my arms full of books, when he just appeared in front of me, blocking my path. "We need to talk," he said. No greeting, no small talk. His expression was serious, his eyes searching mine. "I'm kind of busy, Zach," I said, trying to sidestep him. "No," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Now." He led me to a quiet, deserted bench overlooking the campus green. We sat down, the silence stretching between us. I braced myself. This was it, the interrogation, the accusation. He didn't look at me at first. He just stared out at the lawn. "I've known Ellie for 3 years," he began, his voice quiet. "We had chemistry together freshman year. We were in the same study group. I know her favorite kind of coffee. I know she doodles little stars in her notebooks when she's bored. I know she hums off key when she thinks no one is listening." He finally turned to look at me, and his gaze was so intense it felt like he was looking right through the facade, straight into my soul. "You don't do any of those things," he said softly. "You drink your coffee black. Your notebooks are clean. You're quiet. You walk differently. You talk differently. Your sarcasm, it's sharper, more defensive." He paused, taking a breath. "You're not her." The words hung in the air, a plain and simple statement of fact. He had said it. He knew. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. I opened my mouth to deny it, to come up with some lie, some excuse, but no words came out. What could I possibly say? Seeing my silence, his expression softened. The suspicion in his eyes was replaced by a deep, aching confusion. "But the weird thing is," he continued, his voice barely a whisper, "sometimes you are her. I see flashes, a look in your eye, the way you tilted your head yesterday. It's her. It's like she's in there somewhere." He shook his head, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "You're not her, but somehow, you make me feel like she's still here." A lump formed in my throat. He wasn't accusing me. He was grieving. He was confused. And he was, in his own way. Reaching out, he saw both of us, the ghost and the imposter, sharing the same space. I wanted to tell him everything. The words were right there, on the tip of my tongue. "My name is Ollie. I was your roommate. I took a stupid pink pill and now I'm trapped in this body." But how could I? He would think I was insane. He would hate me. He would see me as a monster who had stolen his friend's face. So I stayed silent, my hands clenched into fists in my lap. The guilt was a physical thing, a crushing weight that made it hard to breathe. I had taken this girl's life, her body, her friends, and I was hurting the people who cared about her with my clumsy, fraudulent performance. I went through something," I finally managed to say, the words feeling thin and inadequate. "I've changed." It was the truth, but it was also a lie. Zach looked at me, and I could tell he didn't believe it. Not completely, but he nodded anyway, accepting the pathetic olive branch I'd offered. "Okay," he said. "Okay, Ellie." He knew I wasn't her, but he called me by her name anyway. It was a strange kind of truce, a silent agreement to live with the mystery. As we walked back to the dorm, he asked me, "That pill you took, the one from my sample kit, was it the pink one?" My blood ran cold. "What?" "The bottle of pink capsules from my desk," he clarified, His tone neutral, clinical, the one for the hormonal supplement trial. The bottle is gone. I just wanted to know if you saw it or moved it. He didn't know. He had no idea. He thought it was a coincidence. The secret was still safe, but it felt like a ticking time bomb. No, I lied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my soul. I haven't seen it. That night, I searched for the pill. I scoured the room, my old drawers, the pockets of Ollie's jeans which were still crumpled in a pile in the back of the closet. I had to know if there was a way to reverse this. There had to be an antidote. I found nothing. I finally came to a terrifying conclusion. The Fem-Pill wasn't a temporary fix. It wasn't a prank. It was a one-way street, a verdict. And I had the sinking feeling that the sentence would only end when I had truly served my time, when I had fully understood what it meant to be her. The confrontation happened a week later, on a night when a full moon hung in the sky like a giant silver coin. I was feeling more fragmented than ever. The lines between Ollie and Ellie dissolving into a confusing gray fog. I couldn't sleep. I felt a strange, restless energy thrumming under my skin. I got out of bed and walked to the mirror, as I had done so many times before. But tonight was different. The moonlight pouring through the window hit the glass at a strange angle, making the reflection seem unnaturally clear, almost three-dimensional. As I stared, my reflection began to change. The face, her face, sharpened. The look in her eyes was no longer my own confused terror. It was her own deep, melancholic wisdom. The image solidified, taking on a life of its own, separate from me. It was Ellie, and she was looking right at me. "Hello, Ollie," she said. Her voice wasn't in my head this time. It seemed to come from the mirror itself, a soft, ethereal sound that filled the silent room. I stumbled back, my heart seizing in my chest. You're real." "I was always real," she replied, her reflection lips moving in perfect sync. "You were just too loud to hear me." We stood there for a long moment, two souls staring at each other through a pane of glass, trapped in a single body. Why, I finally choked out, "Why me?" "You needed to learn," she said simply. "You needed to see." A flicker of old pain crossed her features. "Oh, you took my face, but you couldn't take my heart, my memories, my pain. You had to feel them for yourself." The guilt was a tidal wave. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words feeling small and useless. I was a jerk. I get it now. I see how I treat Bella, how I dismissed everyone. I was an idiot. I looked at her, my eyes pleading. But do I really deserve this to lose my entire life? Her expression softened. Maybe not. She conceded. But this was the only way you would ever truly understand. She looked down for a moment at our shared hands. "Now, you finally see me, not as an object, not as drama, but as a person." Tears started to well in my eyes, hot, thick tears of frustration, of grief for my old self, of a strange, empathetic sorrow for her. "What happens now?" "Nope," she said, her own eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "We stop fighting." She raised her hand in the mirror, and I felt a phantom sensation, a compulsion to do the same. I lifted my own trembling hand and pressed my palm against the cool glass. Her reflection did the same, our fingertips meeting on the surface. As her tears finally fell, a brilliant silver light erupted from the mirror, engulfing me. It wasn't painful. It was warm. It felt like acceptance, like coming home. The two separate consciousnesses, my frantic, panicked one and her sad, quiet one swirled together, merging, integrating. Her memories became my memories. Her pain became my pain. My old life as Ollie felt like a distant, faded photograph. I was no longer Ollie trapped in Ellie's body. I was no longer an imposter. I was just me. I fell to my knees, sobbing, not just for my lost life, but for hers too, for her unspoken feelings for Zach, for the life she never got to fully live. It was a deep, cathartic release of 2 souls' worth of pain. The door creaked open. "Ellie?" It was Zach. He must have heard me crying. He rushed to my side, his face etched with worry. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't ask why I was crying in front of a mirror in the middle of the night. He just knelt down and wrapped his arms around me. I collapsed against him, burying my face in his shoulder, the sobs racking my body. He just held me, his hand gently stroking my hair, murmuring soft, comforting words. "It's okay," he whispered. "Whoever you are, I'm here." That broke me. Whoever you are, he accepted it. He accepted the confusion, the mystery. He accepted me. I pulled back slightly, my tears slowing. I looked into his eyes, and I saw no judgment, only a deep, unwavering kindness. The memories of Ellie's crush, her longing, were now tangled up with my own newfound feelings: gratitude, connection, a strange and terrifying attraction. He gently wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. His touch sent a spark through me. Leaning in, slowly, hesitantly, he closed the distance between us. His lips met mine. The kiss was soft, tentative, and filled with a universe of unspoken emotions. It was a question and an answer all at once. For him. Maybe it was a hello to someone new and a goodbye to someone he'd lost. For me. It was my first kiss as a woman, my first kiss with a man. It was terrifying and confusing, and in a way that defied all logic. It felt right. It felt like the beginning of something I couldn't yet name. I woke the next morning to the sound of birds singing outside the window for the first time since the transformation. I didn't wake up in a panic. There was no jarring disconnect, no wave of horror as I registered the long hair on the pillow or the unfamiliar weight on my chest. There was only a profound sense of peace. I sat up and looked around the room. It didn't feel like a prison or a strange hotel anymore. It felt like my room. Zach was asleep in his bed, his breathing slow and even. My heart gave a little squeeze seeing him there. The memory of the kiss was vivid, a warm ember in my chest. I slipped out of bed and walked to the mirror, my bare feet silent on the cool floor. I wasn't afraid of what I would see. I knew. There was only one person in the reflection, me. Her eyes were my eyes. Her hair was my hair. Her body was my body. The internal voice of Ollie, the sarcastic, scared young man, was gone. His memories were still there, filed away like an old chapter in a book, but they no longer felt like mine. They belonged to someone I used to be. I don't remember when she ended and I began. The thought was simple, a quiet statement of fact. The integration was complete. I was no longer a fragmented soul. I was whole. My name is Ellie. I got dressed, my movements fluid and natural. I chose a simple blue dress and a pair of sandals. The clothes felt like an extension of myself, not a costume. I ran a brush through my hair, the simple act feeling familiar and comforting. When I was ready, I walked out of the dorm and into the morning sunlight. The world felt brand new. I felt the gentle breeze on my bare arms, the warmth of the sun on my face. I noticed the little things, the way the leaves on the trees shimmered, the smell of freshly cut grass, the distant laughter of other students. Before, I had moved through the world as Ollie, oblivious, self-absorbed. Now, as Ellie, I felt connected to everything, my senses alive and open. A group of guys passed me and one of them smiled. It wasn't a leer, just a friendly, fleeting smile. The old me, the new me smiled back. A small, genuine smile. It didn't feel like a performance, it just felt natural. I felt a sense of quiet confidence, a comfortable ownership of my own skin that Ollie, for all his bravado, had never possessed. He had been loud to cover his insecurities. I was quiet because I had nothing to hide. I walked to the campus coffee shop, the place where Ollie had first seen the girl whose face I now wore. I ordered her favorite drink, a vanilla latte with oat milk, not because I was trying to imitate her, but because the memory of its taste felt like my own. It felt like what I wanted. Sitting at a small table by the window, I watched the world go by, feeling a sense of peace that was so profound it was almost overwhelming. I had lost a life, yes, but I had gained a new one, a life where I was more aware, more empathetic, more complete. When I got back to the room, Zach was awake. He was sitting at his desk, but he turned when I came in. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," I replied, my voice clear and steady. We just looked at each other for a long moment. He saw it. I think the change, the peace, the wholeness. A small smile touched his lips. "You seem better today." I am, I said, and I meant it. My eyes fell on his desk. In his haste to clean up the night before, he must have knocked over a box of research supplies, and there, lying on the floor, half hidden under a textbook, was a single, shimmering pink pill. It must have fallen out of the bottle before I took it. The last Fem-Pill. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, a flicker of the old panic returned. A way back, a way to undo it all. The temptation was a physical pull, a magnetic force. I could take it. I could try to go back to being Ollie. I walked over, bent down, and picked it up. It felt weightless in my palm. A tiny pink speck that held the power to shatter my world all over again. I thought of my old life, the casual cruelty, the emotional numbness, the blustering insecurity. Then I thought of my new life, the heightened senses, the deep emotions, the connection I felt to Zach, the peace I felt in my own skin. I looked from the pill in my hand to my reflection in the dark screen of Zach's computer monitor. I saw a girl with hazel eyes, a girl who was finally at home in her own body. I closed my hand around the pill, walked over to my new bedside table, and set it down. I didn't throw it away. I didn't hide it. I just left it there, out in the open, a reminder of the journey, a testament to a choice. Some changes aren't meant to be undone. They're meant to be lived.